Virgin Maid was hired to clean the billionaire's mansion. She never expected he would fall for her. It was 7:52 a.m. when Amia Johnson stared down at the piece of paper in her trembling hand. A cleaning assignment scrawled in blue ink, smudged from her sweat. She stood outside a towering black gate in Buckhead, Atlanta, the kind of neighborhood where Bentleys outnumber birds, and the air smelled like power. Her heart thudded so hard it almost drowned out the sound of her mother's weak breathing from the voicemail playing in her ear. "Baby, don't forget to pick up the medication this afternoon. The pain in my back's back again." She ended the message, pressed her lips together, and rang the intercom. "State your name and purpose," a clipped female voice responded. "Amia Johnson. I'm here for the housekeeping job. Assigned by Premier Elite Cleaning." A pause. Then the gate creaked open without another word. Her heart nearly stalled. She stepped through, clutching her small bag of worn cleaning supplies like armor. She was 20 years old, black American, slim with deep brown skin, and wore her natural coils in a soft, high puff. Her uniform, a navy blue jumpsuit with a plastic name tag that read AMIYAH, barely fit her curves, cinched awkwardly at the waist. She had been raised on 3 things: prayer, hard work, and staying out of rich folks' way. None of them prepared her for Reed Estate. The mansion was a sculpted glass and stone fortress wrapped in silence. Sleek black marble stairs led up to double glass doors that reflected the gray sky above. Inside, the house seemed colder than the wind outside, not because of the temperature, but the emptiness. Not a picture frame in sight, just white walls, chrome accents, and tension in the air that wrapped around her like a noose. A woman emerged from the hallway, thin, pale, dressed in slate gray, and walking like a ghost. "I'm Ms. Lorette. You're late." "I'm sorry, Mom," Amia said softly. "The bus. I don't care about the bus." Lorette's tone sliced. "Rule 1. No touching anything you haven't been told to clean. Rule 2. If Mr. Reed is present, do not speak unless he addresses you. Rule 3. No eye contact. He doesn't like it." "Yes, Mom." "You'll start in the West Wing, bedrooms, floors, then the study. If you're still here by noon, you'll get your first day's pay. If not..." Lorette turned sharply and disappeared behind the nearest door. Amia stood frozen for a second. The hallway stretched like a tunnel, lined with dim art and even dimmer lighting. She swallowed her fear and picked up her mop. By 10:23 a.m., her knees were sore, her fingers pruned from bucket water, and her back aching from bending under furniture that cost more than her mother's entire hospital bill. She had said no to this assignment, twice, but money talks, and hospitals don't care about dignity. She was wiping a spotless marble counter in the study when she felt it, a presence behind her, heavy, watching. It wasn't Lorette. She turned, slowly. He was taller than she imagined. Chancellor Reed, billionaire, recluse, widower, and the coldest man Atlanta society whispered about behind closed doors. 34, black American, skin like polished mahogany, jaw sculpted like judgment, and eyes so sharp they could pierce through steel. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, the top buttons undone, revealing a neck tense with disdain. "What are you doing in here?" Amia's mouth went dry. "Cleaning, sir. Ms. Lorette said..." "I don't like people in my study," he said flatly, "especially not ones I didn't approve." "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I was told..." "Do you always talk this much?" Her lips sealed. She lowered her eyes to the floor, remembering Rule 3. Chancellor stepped further in, walking slow, deliberate. She could hear the weight of his shoes echo in the silence. He stared at her. "Are you new?" "Yes, sir." He studied her, her uniform, her trembling hands, her flushed cheeks, then scoffed. "They sent me another one," he muttered, looking for a story to tell, a shot at a check or a scandal. I didn't ask. Silence stretched. She clutched the mop tighter. Chancellor turned, reaching for a glass of whiskey on the shelf. Don't steal anything. Don't linger. You last till Friday, I'll be impressed. Then he left. The door clicked behind him. Amia exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. That afternoon, Amia cleaned the upper bedrooms in silence. She found no family photos, no signs of joy, only spotless furniture that looked untouched, like it had been bought for display, not living. But one door caught her eye, a pale pink one, slightly ajar. It had tiny hand-painted butterflies around the edges, faded now, but still there. She leaned in, peeked. Inside was a child's bedroom, covered in dust. A tea set sat mid-play on the table, cobwebs hugging its corners. A teddy bear leaned crookedly on a shelf. The air smelled like forgotten lullabies and dried tears. Her eyes stung. She didn't step in. She just whispered, "I'm sorry," and gently closed the door. Behind her, she didn't notice the camera light flicker in the hallway. At 4:12 p.m., Amia left the mansion. Her paycheck for day one was sealed in a crisp envelope. She didn't open it. She sat at the bus stop, waiting. She didn't know that back in the study, Chancellor Reed was reviewing his security footage, something he did often, not for security, but for control. He watched her pause at the nursery door. He saw her whisper to it, and then... nothing. She didn't steal, she didn't snoop, she didn't even flinch when he belittled her. Chancellor leaned back in his chair. "She's not like the others," he murmured. He picked up the pink teddy bear from his desk drawer and stared at it long and hard, before tossing it into the trash. Amia returned to the mansion the next morning with aching knees, a half-eaten banana in her pocket, and the ghost of Chancellor Reed's voice still playing in her ears. "Do you always talk this much?" "You last till Friday. I'll be impressed." It wasn't the worst thing she'd ever been told, but somehow, coming from him, it stung differently. The gate opened without a word. No one greeted her. The house stood like a museum again, silent, sterile, intimidating. She slipped through the front doors and found her work schedule taped to a clipboard near the entrance. Amia Johnson, assigned, guest bedroom, kitchen, south lounge, study, again. The study? Her heart skipped. Ms. Lorette walked past her, sharp heels clicking on the marble. "I told him he should rotate you," she said with a faint sneer. "But Mr. Reed insisted you go back to the same rooms, said you cleaned efficiently. Don't let it go to your head." "I won't," Amia whispered. "You shouldn't even still be here. Last week's girl lasted 2 days. Just clean and keep your eyes down. That man doesn't like women hanging around." "I'm not hanging around." Lorette looked her up and down like she wasn't convinced. By late morning, Amia was in the kitchen, scrubbing stainless steel until her reflection stared back at her. The kitchen staff had the day off. Apparently, Chancellor rarely ate at home. He drank, brooded, and disappeared into his study most evenings. But the silence was broken when the back door creaked. She turned and froze. There he was, Chancellor Reed, wearing loose grey slacks and a black V-neck that clung to his chest. He looked like he hadn't slept. His beard was slightly grown out, eyes shadowed beneath. He walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottled water, and turned to leave. Then paused, his eyes locked on her. "You cleaned the bar." She blinked. "Yes, sir, it was on the checklist." "It hasn't sparkled like that in 2 years." "I used baking soda and vinegar," she said softly, clutching her sponge like a shield. "It works better than polish on marble." He said nothing for a beat. Then, "You always whisper like that?" She swallowed. "Only when I'm not sure if I'm safe speaking." His brow raised slightly, as if no one had ever said something like that to him. He left without another word. In the study, Amia dusted the bookshelves, careful not to touch anything Chancellor had left open. There were 2 law journals, a half-filled glass of dark liquor, and a single red pen. On the far side of the room was a locked drawer. She didn't touch it. She didn't dare. But she did notice something else. In the trash bin, a teddy bear, small, pink, with a fraying ribbon at the neck. Her heart clenched. It wasn't hers to take, but it didn't feel right seeing it tossed like garbage. Gently, she picked it up and set it on the far corner of the bookshelf. Upright, dusted off. She turned and resumed cleaning, not knowing the man who had just re-entered the hallway, outside, and was watching her quietly through the barely open study door. Upstairs, while cleaning the guest bedroom, she found herself staring at one of the only photos in the mansion, a black and white image of Chancellor in his 20s, standing beside a woman who looked like a dream. She had light brown skin, long wavy hair, and the kind of laugh frozen in time. A girl stood between them, maybe 4 years old, with big eyes and tiny sneakers. They were a family once, but in this house, they were ghosts. A door creaked. Amia quickly stepped back, lowering her gaze. Chancellor stood at the threshold, eyes landing on the photo. "You were staring," he said. "I'm sorry. I was just... It's a beautiful picture." He didn't respond. "I didn't mean to be rude." "You weren't." Silence. Then he surprised her. "That was taken a week before the accident." She looked up, shocked that he was speaking so freely. "My wife. She wanted a family picnic, said I was working too much, so I left a board meeting early and drove 3 hours to meet them. That picture was her way of saying, 'Thank you,' without saying it." Amia swallowed. "She looks happy." "She was," he said quietly, "until I ruined everything." Her breath caught. "I'm sorry," she said. He nodded once, then left the room. Later that evening, Lorette found Amia in the hallway near the east wing. "I saw what you did." Amia stiffened. "Did what?" "The bear. In the study, I didn't think it belonged in the trash. That bear was his daughter's. He threw it away 3 times. Every time a maid tries to return it, she's fired." Amia's chest sank. "I didn't know." "You still didn't ask." Amia lowered her head. "Should I leave?" Lorette sighed, a flicker of something soft flashing in her sharp eyes. "Oddly enough, he told me not to touch it, said to leave it where the girl put it." Amia looked up, confused. "Just keep your head down, Miss Johnson," Lorette muttered. "That man has a heart buried so deep, even he can't find it. Don't go digging." That night, Chancellor stood alone in the study, staring at the pink teddy bear across the room. The lights were dimmed, thunder rolled outside, and his glass of whiskey was untouched. For the first time in years, he walked over and picked it up. He sat in his leather chair, holding the bear in his lap. He didn't cry, he didn't speak, but something broke, quietly. The mansion was silent, but not empty. For the first time, Amia could feel a presence moving through its halls that wasn't cold or distant. Something in the house had shifted, not in volume, but in vibration. The air had changed. She didn't know what caused it, but she could feel it in her chest. Chancellor Reed was watching her. He never said anything directly. He didn't hover, but wherever she went he always seemed to have passed just moments before. The glass he set down still had warmth. The light he turned off still glowed faintly, and the tension he left behind clung to the walls like static. On her 3rd morning at the mansion, she passed him on the stairs. She lowered her eyes as usual, clutched the cleaning caddy to her chest, and moved to the far side like the rules said. But then she heard it. "Amia." Her heart slammed. She stopped. "Yes, sir?" His voice came softer than she expected. "You cleaned the east wing today." She blinked. "Sir?" He turned slightly, his hand still on the railing, gaze unreadable. Room at the end of the hall. Don't touch the wardrobe. Leave everything else. And just like that, he walked away. The east wing. No one touched it. Even Lorette had warned her not to go near it. That hallway was darker, narrower, and colder than the rest of the house. The hardwood floor creaked beneath her sneakers. The paint was older. The walls still held faded stickers, tiny hearts and butterflies barely clinging to the surface. She opened the last door. Inside was a little girl's bedroom, frozen in time. The walls were painted lavender. The bedding was Disney princess themed, but dulled with dust. A collection of dolls lined a shelf, their button eyes staring outward as if waiting for someone who never returned. A half-drawn picture was still taped to the wall, stick figures of a mommy, daddy, and me. Amia stepped in slowly, as if the floor might collapse from grief. She didn't sweep at first. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded, taking it in. The stillness, the pain. She reached for a tiny book beside the pillow, Goodnight Moon, and opened it gently. Inside the cover, a child's handwriting read, "To Daddy, love Maddie, read to me forever." Her eyes blurred. She set the book down, wiped her face, and began to clean. Downstairs, Chancellor stood in his study, watching the security feed. As always, he had told himself it was for liability, privacy, control. But when he saw her sit on the bed, instead of wiping it like an object, when he saw her carefully place the book back where it belonged, he didn't change the channel. He watched, and in the flickering footage, it was no longer just a maid. It was a young woman tending to a memory with reverence, a stranger treating his pain with gentleness, not pity, a girl who didn't belong in a mansion, but somehow made it feel like a home again. That evening, Lorette cornered Amia near the laundry room. "You touched the east wing?" "I was told to." "By Mr. Reed?" "Yes." Lorette folded her arms, scanning Amia's face. "What did you see?" "A bedroom," Amia said carefully. "For a little girl." "That room hasn't been opened in 4 years." "I know." "And he told you to clean it?" Amia nodded. Lorette's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand what that means." "I'm just doing my job." "No, you're not," Lorette said. "You're doing something none of us could. You're making him feel again, and that's dangerous." Amia's brow furrowed. "I'm not. Let me give you advice. That man is not a savior. He's a storm, and people like you don't survive storms. You get swallowed." She walked away before Amia could respond. The next morning, Amia walked into the study to dust, like she'd been assigned. Chancellor was already there, seated at his desk. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms, and a silver ring glinted on his finger as he flipped through a document. She froze. "I can come back later." "No, it's fine." She moved around him in silence, duster in hand. The air was tense, thick, but then, as she was wiping the bookshelf, her sleeve knocked over a glass paperweight. It fell, shattered. Her heart stopped. She dropped to her knees instantly. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Chancellor stood, fast. She braced for yelling, for insults, for what always came when you broke something that didn't belong to you. But instead, silence. She looked up and saw him watching her, not with anger, but something else. Sadness, curiosity. She started gathering the shards. "I'll pay for it." "You don't have to." "I will. I broke it." "It was already broken," he said quietly. She paused, confused. He knelt beside her. For the first time, their hands touched as they reached for the same piece of glass. She pulled back like it burned. He didn't. "I hired you to clean," he said slowly, "but you've done more than that." "I haven't done anything." "You left the bear." She looked up, eyes wide. "I saw the footage." Her cheeks flushed. "I didn't know what to do with it." You did exactly what she would have done, he said, voice strained. She used to line up all her toys like soldiers, told me they'd protect her room from bad dreams. Amia felt her throat tighten. I think she would have liked you, he added. Silence stretched between them, thick with things unspoken. Then he stood abruptly. Lorette will give you a bonus this week. I don't want a bonus. He looked over his shoulder. Then what do you want, Amia? She swallowed. To do a good job. He watched her for a moment longer, then left the room, leaving behind the scent of cologne and the echo of a question she couldn't stop thinking about. That night, Amia stood outside the mansion, under the pale orange streetlights. Her bus was late again. She checked her cracked phone. 9:12 p.m. Her mom hadn't called. The wind picked up. She tightened her jacket and stared at the night sky. Behind her, headlights approached. A sleek black car stopped near the sidewalk. The window rolled down. Chancellor's voice cut through the hum of the engine. Get in, it's late. She stepped back. I'm okay, sir. You've been cleaning my house for 3 days. I don't let people walk home from my house in the dark. She hesitated. Is this part of my job? No, he said. This is part of mine. She climbed in. Neither of them spoke as the car drove through the city. But in the silence, something shifted again. Not cold, not broken, just something real. The ride in Chancellor Reed's car that night had been quiet, but not uncomfortable. For Amia, sitting in that luxury leather seat beside a man so powerful, so untouchable, made her feel like she was trespassing in a life she didn't belong to. But he didn't make her feel small. Not this time. He just drove her home, eyes forward, jaw tight, silence thick between them. When he pulled up in front of her apartment building, a chipped brick structure that leaned like it was tired of holding itself up, she hesitated with her hand on the door. Thank you for the ride, sir, she said. He didn't answer right away. His voice, when it came, was low. You don't need to keep calling me sir. My name is Chancellor. Amia turned her head slowly, surprised. Okay, she said softly. Thank you, Chancellor. He looked at her again, really looked, as if trying to read something on her face he hadn't noticed before. Then he nodded once. Be safe. I'll see you tomorrow. She stepped out, walked toward her building without looking back, but her heart was thudding in a rhythm she didn't recognize. The next morning, Ms. Lorette was waiting at the front door of the mansion when Amia arrived, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. You'll start upstairs today, she said curtly, then report to the East Wing. Amia's brows lifted. Again? Mr. Reed's orders. Did something happen? Lorette's lip twitched. Apparently, he wants you to sort through personal belongings in the girls' room. Photograph albums, toys, clothes. Make a list of anything damaged or moldy. Amia's breath caught. That felt intimate, too intimate, but she nodded anyway. Yes, ma'am. And for God's sake, Lorette added with a huff, don't start singing lullabies in there again. The cameras catch everything. Amia's cheeks warmed. She hadn't realized she'd been humming. It was a habit, a nervous one, passed down from her mother, who used to hum gospel when sweeping the porch. I'll be careful. Lorette handed her a ring of keys. You've been given clearance to open the back closet and dresser drawers. Don't go through his wife's things, only the child's. Yes, ma'am. Inside the East Wing, sunlight filtered through the pink curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. It was quieter today, less like a tomb, more like a memory. Amia pulled on gloves and opened the first drawer in the small pink dresser. Tiny socks, glittery hair clips, bracelets made of cheap plastic beads. Each item was carefully bagged and labeled, just as Chancellor had asked. She found a photo album tucked behind a basket of stuffed animals. When she opened it, her heart twisted. Smiling pictures of a little girl, Madeline Reed, with wide eyes, puffy afro puffs, and a grin that showed missing front teeth, her arms always wrapped around Chancellor's neck. In one photo, he was sitting on the floor in a full business suit, wearing a tiara and letting her paint his nails pink. Amia smiled. She couldn't help it. This man, the one who moved like a shadow through his own house, had once been someone's whole world. A sticky note fluttered out of the album. "Daddy, don't be sad. You can sleep in my room tonight if you have bad dreams. I'll protect you. Love, Maddie." Amia pressed it to her chest and closed her eyes. Downstairs, Chancellor was pacing. He hadn't planned to ask her to touch the girl's things. In fact, he hadn't stepped foot in that closet in 4 years. But something about Amia, the way she moved through pain like it was familiar, the way she handled memories with reverence instead of pity, made him believe she could handle what he couldn't. Lorette appeared in the doorway. "She's in the East Wing." He nodded. "She's quiet, efficient," Lorette said. "But you know that already." "I do." Lorette hesitated. "She doesn't belong here, Chancellor." He turned toward her slowly. "What does that mean?" "You know exactly what it means. You're breaking your own rules." Chancellor stepped closer, voice dangerously calm. "I have no interest in her. She's an employee." Lorette raised a brow. "Then why did you have me double her pay?" Silence. "She's not like the others," he finally said. "She's not supposed to be anything to you at all," Lorette warned. "You hired her to clean, not heal you." "I didn't ask her to heal anything." "No," Lorette said softly, "but you're starting to hope she will, and that's the most dangerous thing a man like you can do." Later that afternoon, Amia was leaving the child's bedroom with her logbook in hand when she found Chancellor standing in the hallway. He looked tired, but he also looked less haunted. "You finished already?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, everything is documented. I bagged the items with mold and labeled the boxes." He looked past her into the room. Did it feel strange to be in there? "A little," she admitted, "but not in a bad way." He tilted his head. "You talk about grief like it's something you know." She swallowed. "My father died when I was 12, she said. "My mother never recovered. I think I started working at 15 just to keep her from thinking about it." "I'm sorry." "I'm not," she said quietly. "It taught me how to take care of people, even when I didn't know how." His eyes lingered on her face, the soft curve of her jaw, the tremble in her voice. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, just purity, honesty. "I'm not good with people," he said, after a long silence. She smiled faintly. "I noticed." He laughed once, a short, surprised sound. And then, suddenly, he asked, "Would you stay for dinner?" She blinked. "Dinner?" "There's no staff tonight. I'm not asking for service. I'm asking you to join me." "I don't think you can leave after. I'll call you a car." Her mind screamed no, rules, boundaries, jobs. But her heart, it didn't. She nodded slowly. "Okay." That evening, Amia stood in the grand dining room, arms crossed over her modest long-sleeve blouse. She'd changed into something simple from her overnight bag. A navy dress with flat shoes. Her natural hair had been brushed into a soft bun. She looked like she didn't belong in a room with gold-lined plates and imported crystal. But when Chancellor entered in a dark button-down and slacks and saw her standing nervously at the far end of the table, his breath caught. "You clean up well," he said, then winced. "That was not what I meant. I mean," she smiled. "I know what you meant." He motioned for her to sit, and they dined quietly, grilled salmon and wild rice, made by a private chef before his leave. But it wasn't about the food. It was the silence between bites, the shared glances, the unexpected laughter when she described the time her little cousin set the microwave on fire. The way Chancellor leaned in when she talked, genuinely interested. It was the first real dinner he'd had with someone in years. Not a business associate, not a model on his arm. Just someone honest. As the night ended and he walked her to the door, he paused. "You'll be back tomorrow?" She smiled. "Unless I get fired overnight." "You won't." She hesitated, then added softly, "Thank you. For dinner." He nodded. "Thank you for saying yes." Their eyes held for a long moment. He opened the door for her, and for the first time in 4 years, Chancellor Reed watched someone walk out of his house and hoped they'd come back. The next morning, the sun didn't rise gently over Buckhead. It clawed its way through the clouds, casting long gold streaks over the Reed estate like a spotlight. And Amia felt it immediately. Even before she stepped inside, there was a pressure in the air. A shift. The front gates were wide open, not slowly creaking as usual. The driveway shimmered with fresh tire tracks from more expensive cars than usual. And when she walked into the foyer, it was filled with noise. Voices, heels, movement. People were inside. Not housekeepers, not staff, strangers, women in heels, men in suits. And at the center of it all stood Bianca Gaines, tall, commanding, light-skinned with caramel undertones, and eyes sharp enough to cut glass. She was in her early 30s, model-thin and immaculately dressed in a white designer dress that clung to her body like a second skin. Her jet-black weave flowed down her back in waves, and her makeup looked like it had been airbrushed. She didn't look like a guest. She looked like she owned the place. Amia paused in the hallway, clutching her cleaning caddy tight. Lorette appeared beside her a second later, lips pressed in a line. "She's back," Lorette muttered. "Who?" "Bianca, Chancellor's late wife's cousin, and ex-fiancé." Amia blinked. "He was engaged again." "After his wife's death," Lorette replied. "Briefly and poorly. It ended in chaos, and she left for Dubai. Guess she got tired of waiting for him to come to his senses." Amia's chest tightened. She didn't know why. "Should I leave?" Lorette snorted. "Not unless you want her to win. Just do your job. But watch your back. Bianca doesn't like competition." "I'm not." "She won't care." Bianca's voice echoed through the marble halls. She moved like a queen inspecting her kingdom, tossing sharp smiles to staff members and whispering, redecorating comments about art pieces that had been there for years. When she finally saw Amia, her entire body paused, as if the help had dared to breathe the same air. "Oh," she said, with theatrical surprise. "You must be new." Amia gave a polite nod. "Amia Johnson. I'm with Premier Elite Cleaning." Bianca tilted her head, eyeing Amia's navy jumpsuit and plain sneakers like they offended her. "Premier Elite?" she repeated, amused. "Looks more like budget basic." Amia kept her face neutral. "I've been working here for a few days now." Bianca's smile stretched. "Interesting. Chancellor usually hates people in his space, but I suppose rules get looser when the maid has dimples." Amia's cheeks burned, but she didn't bite. "I'll stay out of your way," she said calmly. Bianca's eyes narrowed. "You already haven't. Chancellor didn't make an appearance until noon." When he entered the estate, he was on the phone, wearing his signature navy trench coat and a watch worth more than Amia's apartment building. He passed Amia without looking, his voice sharp with business, but his hand briefly touched her back as he moved past her. A gentle graze. It lasted less than a second, but Bianca saw it, and something inside her snapped. Hours passed. Amia worked upstairs, focused on the second-floor library. She was dusting high shelves, the scent of old books calming her nerves when she heard stilettos. She turned just as Bianca walked in, holding a champagne flute that she clearly hadn't paid for. "Still here?" Bianca said sweetly. Amia stood up straight. "Yes, ma'am, just finishing the shelf." Bianca's eyes trailed across the room like a cat stalking prey. "You know, I used to live here." Amia stayed quiet. Bianca stepped closer. "I helped raise this house after his wife died, held his hand when he couldn't breathe, gave him a reason to keep going. And then you? What? You wipe a few windows and suddenly you think you matter?" "I don't think anything," Amia said calmly. "I just clean." Bianca chuckled. "Don't play dumb. I've seen that look in his eyes. I've heard the way staff say your name. Amia did this, Amia did that. And now he's looking at you like you're something special." "I never asked him to." "No," Bianca sneered. "You just stood there being young and sweet and poor. Men love a charity case, until they get bored." Amia turned to leave, but Bianca stepped in her path and, without warning, slapped her. The sound cracked through the room like thunder. Amia staggered back, eyes wide with shock. "You better remember your place," Bianca hissed. "What the hell are you doing?" Chancellor's voice roared across the room like a gunshot. He stood in the doorway, eyes blazing, fists clenched. For the first time, Amia saw rage behind that controlled facade. Bianca straightened, startled. "Chancellor, Get out!" Her lips parted. "Wait, baby. I didn't mean—" "Get out!" Bianca's expression crumbled. "You're kicking me out over her?" "I'm kicking you out because you just assaulted someone under my roof," he said coldly. "Leave, now!" Bianca glanced at Amia one last time, her face twisted with venom, then stormed out in silence, heels stabbing the marble like knives. Amia stood frozen. Chancellor walked to her, hands trembling slightly. "Did she hurt you?" he asked. "I'm okay," Amia whispered. He reached up, gently brushing his fingers across her cheek where the slap had landed. "She had no right to touch you." "You didn't have to defend me." He looked at her, voice barely audible. "I wanted to." They stood there in silence. The air between them was thick, electric. "Why did she say you were engaged?" Amia asked quietly. Chancellor sighed. "Bianca was comfort during chaos. I mistook it for love. When I realized the truth, I ended it. She didn't take it well." "She still loves you?" He looked away. "She loved control, she loved the title, but she didn't love me, not really." "And what about you?" Amia asked, heart pounding. "Have you ever really loved anyone?" He turned back to her, eyes unreadable. "Yes," he said after a moment. "But it's been a long time." She swallowed. "You don't have to answer that." "I just did." That night, Chancellor stood in his study alone. He watched the security footage again, not of the slap, not of Bianca leaving, but of Amia cleaning, smiling at dusty picture frames, singing quietly under her breath, treating the mansion like it was sacred, not just rich. He closed his laptop, walked to the window, and whispered into the silence. "Why are you the only person who sees me when I don't even see myself?" The rain came down in waves, the kind of Atlanta thunderstorm that rattled windows and soaked streets in seconds. It roared against the Reed Estate's towering windows, like a warning, beating with the same restless rhythm thudding in Amia's chest. She stood by the service entrance, waiting for the storm to pass. But tonight, the mansion was too quiet, too heavy. The tension from Bianca's outburst earlier that day still lingered in the air, thick like fog. Chancellor hadn't spoken to her since. He hadn't come down for dinner. Not a word, not even a nod. Part of her thought he was angry. Another part feared something worse, that he'd closed the door again, that whatever warmth had flickered in his soul was gone now, extinguished by scandal and embarrassment. She didn't expect to see him, but at 8:43 p.m., he walked into the foyer, shirt sleeves rolled, hair slightly damp from the shower, barefoot, as if the weight of shoes was too much tonight. He looked up, saw her by the back door, stopped. "You're still here?" he asked. "The rain's too heavy to walk," she said, turning from the window. "My bus line's delayed. I called for a car, but it never came." He hesitated for only a second. "Come on." She blinked. "Where?" "The sunroom. It's safer to wait there. Storm's too loud in this hallway." Amia hesitated, but followed. The sunroom was dimly lit, but soft. Candles flickered on a table near the wide glass doors. Rain streaked down the massive windows like silver tears. The smell of jasmine from an old oil diffuser filled the air. Chancellor motioned for her to sit. She did, on the far side of the couch. He poured them each a glass of water from the carafe on the table. No wine, no whiskey, just water. "It's strange," she said, after a few moments, breaking the silence. "This house, it's quieter when it rains." He looked at her. "Most people say the opposite." "I think silence is louder when everything else is falling." He nodded slowly, like he understood too well. They sat in silence for a while, just listening to the storm. Then softly, she asked, "Do you miss her? Your wife?" He didn't answer right away. "I used to," he said finally. "But grief, it doesn't stay one shape. It changes. At first it was fire, then ice. Now it's something else." "Like what?" "Like air," he said. "Invisible, constant. Sometimes I don't even notice it. Other times I can't breathe because of it." Amia's chest ached. "And your daughter?" His voice lowered. "She comes in dreams. I always try to hold her, but she slips through." She closed her eyes. "I'm sorry." "You don't have to keep saying that." "I don't know what else to say." He turned toward her. "Just sit with me." And she did. They didn't speak for a long time. Outside, the thunder cracked like a whip, and lightning lit the glass walls in electric flashes. Then, without thinking, Amia began to hum. A soft, wordless melody, the same one she'd hummed while cleaning the child's bedroom. Chancellor turned to her, something in his eyes breaking open. "My daughter loved that song." Amia's voice trembled. "I didn't know that. I hum it when I'm nervous. My mum used to sing it when I was little." "She had a music box with that tune," he said quietly. "She used to spin it over and over, even when she was supposed to be asleep." Amia smiled gently. "Sounds like her spirit's still here." "She's in every room," he murmured, "and yet the house has never felt less alive." They sat side by side, rain drumming around them. Then slowly, Chancellor reached forward and took her hand. Amia stiffened at first, shocked by the warmth, by the intimacy, but she didn't pull away. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, slow, deliberate. "You're not like anyone I've ever known," he said. "I'm just a maid." "No," he whispered. "You're a mirror." She blinked. "A mirror? You don't try to fix me. You don't worship me. You just see me." Amia's throat tightened. "You don't scare me. I scare myself." Their hands stayed joined, the storm raged on, and then, slowly, he lifted her hand to his lips. A soft kiss, not romantic, not demanding, just reverent. Amia's breath caught. "You don't have to do that." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." Their eyes met, and for the first time, really, truly, they saw each other. Not maid and master, not billionaire and housekeeper, just man and woman. Two broken people sitting in the middle of a storm, finally letting it soak them instead of hiding from it. An hour passed. The rain slowed to a drizzle, but neither of them moved. When the thunder faded and the silence returned, Amia stood slowly. "I should go." He nodded, but didn't release her hand. "I'll drive you." "You don't have to. I want to." They walked to the garage together, silent but full of energy. As they pulled into her street, Amia turned toward him. "I'll see you tomorrow?" He looked at her. "You'll see me," he said, "but tomorrow things will feel different." She frowned. "Why?" He leaned slightly closer. "Because after tonight I won't be able to pretend you're just an employee anymore." Her heart fluttered. "I never thought I was." He stared at her, searching her face, then whispered, "Good night, Amia." "Good night, Chancellor." She stepped out of the car and didn't look back, but he watched her the whole way into the building. Back in the mansion, Chancellor poured himself a glass of water. He stood in the kitchen, staring out into the night, the storm gone but his mind still clouded. He picked up his phone, opened his notes app, typed 4 words. "She's not like them," and for the first time in 4 years, he didn't delete it. The next morning, the mansion felt quieter than usual, not the oppressive silence of grief, but something more uncertain, like the house itself was holding its breath. Amia walked through the marble halls with soft footsteps, her cleaning caddy tucked under one arm, and her thoughts still back in Chancellor's car from the night before. The kiss on her hand, the way he'd said her name. The thunder outside had been nothing compared to the storm in her chest. She hadn't dreamed last night. She had replayed every word, every touch. Now she wasn't sure how to face him. Her work list was clipped to the foyer table. Amia, archive room, Lower East Hall, keys at service desk. She frowned. Archive room? She'd never even seen that door unlocked. The Lower East Hall was the oldest part of the mansion, where storage closets held furniture draped in sheets and forgotten portraits of ancestors stared from dusty walls. It smelled like mothballs and faded wealth. Amia approached the service desk and found a single silver key labeled AR3. Attached to it was a folded note in a familiar, sharp handwriting. "The room is safe. Use gloves. Sort through the bottom 2 file drawers only. CR." She felt her pulse spike at the initials. She hadn't seen him yet today, but now she felt his presence again, as though his eyes were always 2 steps ahead of hers. The archive room was colder than the rest of the house, lit only by a single swinging bulb above. Metal file cabinets lined the walls, some rusted, some locked. The air tasted of old paper and history. She pulled on gloves and opened the bottom drawer of the second cabinet, just as instructed. Inside were legal folders, labeled, dated, mostly financial records, taxes, acquisitions, investments. She catalogued them neatly, stacking ones dated pre-2018 in one pile, post-2018 in another. But as she reached the final folder, a thin envelope slid loose from between the files and fell to the floor. She bent to pick it up. It was yellowed, sealed with a faded red wax crest, and marked, "Confidential, PI Report, October 2019. Her breath caught. She shouldn't open it, but she did. Inside was a 3-page report. She skimmed the first few lines, her eyes widening as the words sank in. Subject, Madeline Reed. Status, not deceased. Possible abduction covered by staged vehicle fire. DNA evidence inconclusive due to missing remains. Recommendation, follow-up investigation stalled due to closed case status and client withdrawal. Amia's entire body went still. Madeline, his daughter, not deceased? The world tilted. She read it again. Every line, the accident, the fire. But no conclusive identification of the child's remains. A suspicion that the crash had been staged, that someone had taken the little girl. A sharp creak behind her made her jump. She turned. Ms. Lorette stood in the doorway, arms folded, face unreadable. "You weren't supposed to see that." I dropped it. It slid out of the folder, Amia stammered, tucking the report back into the envelope. You need to forget what you read, Lorette said flatly. Does Chancellor know? Lorette stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. He knows. He chose not to pursue it. But why? Why wouldn't he want to know the truth? Because the truth doesn't always bring peace, Lorette said. It brings destruction, obsession, madness. He barely survived once. If you tell him, he won't survive again. Amia held the envelope tight to her chest. If there's even a chance that little girl is alive. She's not your daughter, Lorette snapped. This is not your pain to carry. Maybe not, Amia whispered, but I'm already carrying it. Lorette stared at her, then sighed and looked away. Burn it, she said quietly. No one will know. Amia looked down at the envelope in her hands. I can't do that. Later that day, she stood in the garden, hands shaking, heart pounding. Chancellor found her there. He wasn't in a suit today, just a charcoal sweater and slacks, sleeves pushed up, no watch. The sun made his skin glow warm, but his eyes were shadowed. You've been avoiding me, he said. I wasn't sure if I should talk to you today. Because of last night? Because of what I found. He stiffened. What do you mean? Amia turned, holding the envelope out. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to find it, but I did. Chancellor took the envelope. His face gave nothing away, but his hands trembled as he opened it. I thought I had it buried, he said finally. Why didn't you keep looking? Because I was told she died, because hope is cruel, because every time I let myself believe otherwise, I woke up screaming. She stepped closer. She might be out there. She might be gone, he replied, and chasing a ghost will destroy me, again. But if she is alive, doesn't she deserve to be found? He stared at her. She was 4 years old, he whispered. She called me her superhero, and I failed her. I buried an empty coffin because I had no answers. If you think I haven't dreamed of going after her every single day for 4 years. His voice broke. Amia reached for his hand. I don't want to bring you pain, she said softly, but I also don't want to stand by while there's a chance she could still come home. He looked at her. You believe in miracles? I believe in people who refuse to give up, she said. Silence stretched. Then slowly, Chancellor pulled her into his arms. He didn't kiss her. He didn't speak. He just held her, as though she was the only thing tethering him to the ground. That night, Chancellor sat in his study with the envelope open on the desk. Beside him, Amia sat quietly, watching. He picked up the phone, dialed a number he hadn't touched in 4 years. This is Chancellor Reed, he said. I need to reopen a closed case. He looked at Amia, then added, This time I won't stop until I know the truth. It had been 3 days since Chancellor reopened the case file. 3 days since he pulled Amia into his arms and whispered the words, This time I won't stop. Now the house pulsed with a new kind of energy, half hope, half fear. There were new calls at odd hours, confidential emails printed and locked in drawers. A former investigator had been brought back in. Chancellor was focused, obsessed even, but beneath the sharpness in his eyes, something softer lingered every time he looked at Amia, and she felt it, every time. The evening sky was painted lavender when Amia knocked on the study door with a tray of tea. She wasn't asked to deliver it, but she'd learned the patterns of Chancellor's silence, and tonight he'd been too quiet for too long. Come in, he called, voice gravelly. She stepped inside. He sat at the desk, surrounded by files and newspaper clippings, his shoulders hunched, his eyes bloodshot. He hadn't shaved. His sweater hung off one shoulder. The man who once walked like a king now looked like a man trying to outwalk his past. I thought you could use something warm, she said softly, setting the tray beside him. He didn't speak at first, just stared at her, her hands, her eyes, her presence. She was his calm in the storm, and he knew it. Finally, he pushed the papers aside. "Sit with me." She did. They sat on opposite ends of the long leather couch, the soft jazz from the record player barely filling the silence between them. "I haven't thanked you," he said quietly. "You don't need to." "Yes, I do," he replied. "You did something I couldn't. You reminded me how to hope." She smiled faintly. "I didn't do anything special. You opened a door I'd locked from the inside." She looked down at her hands. "I just wanted to help." "You did," he said. "You're the only reason I haven't drowned in my own guilt again." A pause, then softer. "You make this place feel like a home." Amia's breath caught. He turned to face her more directly, his knees brushing hers. "Amia," he began. She looked up and froze. There was something raw in his expression. No armor, no wall, just a man standing at the edge of something terrifying. "I haven't felt anything real in a long time," he confessed. "Not until you." Her heart thudded so hard she could barely breathe. "I know it's wrong," he continued. "You work for me. There are lines, rules." "Lines we've already crossed," she whispered. His hand brushed hers. "And still, I feel like I'm holding back." She met his eyes. "Then stop holding back." That was all it took. His hand slid to the side of her face, tentative at first, then certain. He leaned in slowly, as though giving her time to stop him. She didn't. Their lips met. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was needy. 2 years of silence crashing into one desperate moment. Amia gasped softly as his mouth moved against hers. Her hands slid into his hair. He kissed her like she was the only truth he knew, like she was the answer to every prayer he'd never dared to speak. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I'm scared," he whispered. "So am I. But I've never been more sure of anything." She didn't speak. She just kissed him again. Later, Chancellor walked her down the hallway, their fingers loosely entwined. At the bedroom door, she hesitated. "I should go," she said, voice husky. "You don't have to," she smiled. "But I should." He nodded, brushing her cheek with his thumb. "You changed everything," he said. She reached up and touched his chest. "And you made me believe I wasn't invisible." He kissed her forehead. She turned and walked away. And as he stood there watching her disappear around the corner, Chancellor felt something rise in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The next morning, Amia found Ms. Lorette waiting near the stairwell, arms crossed, face cold. "You didn't come to breakfast," Lorette said sharply. "Everything okay?" "I'm fine," Amia replied, trying not to blush. "You know, I've seen women get that look in their eyes before," Lorette said. "The he sees me look." Amia didn't respond. "I don't care what's going on between you and Chancellor," Lorette added, "but I do care if it blinds you." "Blinds me to what?" "To the danger," Lorette snapped. "This house is built on secrets. That man is carrying things you still don't understand. Don't get so close you forget where you came from." Amia met her eyes. "I know where I came from." Lorette's expression softened just a little. "Good," she said, "because if that girl is still alive, if this investigation goes where I think it might, then every enemy Chancellor has ever buried is going to come back out of the ground." That afternoon, Chancellor received a call. Amia was nearby, cleaning the upstairs hall as he stepped into his study. She paused when she heard his voice, calm but strained. "This is Chancellor. Yes. Are you sure?" A pause. "Send me everything." Another pause. "I'll handle it myself." He stepped out moments later, tension tight in his frame. She met him at the top of the stairs. You found something, she said. He nodded once. There's a girl, in Tennessee, same birthmark, same age. She was adopted a year after the accident. Her hand flew to her chest. It could be her? I don't know yet. I'll come with you, she said instinctively. He hesitated. Are you sure? I want to be there if she's yours. He studied her face, then nodded. We leave tonight. As the sun dipped below the skyline, a black SUV pulled out of the Reed Estate's private gate, with Chancellor behind the wheel and Amia in the passenger seat. Neither of them knew what they'd find on the road ahead, but as the city lights disappeared in the rearview mirror and the darkness of uncertainty wrapped around them like a blanket, their hands found each other's once again, not because they were sure, but because now they were facing everything together. The car ride from Atlanta to Tennessee was 6 hours of tension wrapped in silence. Not the awkward kind, not the kind that weighed them down. It was a sacred quiet, the kind that wrapped around the truth and protected it while it grew roots. Chancellor had his hands on the wheel, his jaw clenched the entire time. His eyes didn't leave the road, but Amia could tell he wasn't seeing it. His mind was already ahead of them, in a small town just outside of Knoxville, where a child with a crescent-shaped birthmark behind her ear had been spotted in a foster photo catalogue 4 years ago. Beside him, Amia sat with a file folder on her lap. It held only 2 things, the PI report and the printed adoption registry listing the name of a girl, Annalise B. Carter, age 8. No photos were provided, just a town name, Willow Creek, Tennessee. Amia glanced over at him. You don't have to do this alone. He didn't look at her. I'm not. By the time they pulled into the small town, the sun was sinking low behind tall pine trees. Willow Creek was quiet, with a single street of shops and a police station that looked more like a post office. Chancellor parked outside Sainte Maribel's children's home, a modest brick building with a rusted swing set and a wooden cross above the door. Amia's heart pounded as they approached. A nun answered the door, Sister Evelyn, elderly, with kind eyes and hands folded over a worn Bible. We don't usually accept visitors without notice, she said cautiously. Chancellor showed her his ID. We're not just visiting. We're here to ask about a girl. Her eyes flickered toward Amia. Are you the child's mother? Amia shook her head. No, Mom, she's with me, Chancellor said gently. Sister Evelyn looked between them, then opened the door wider. You'd better come in. Inside the children's home, everything smelled like lemon disinfectant and crayons. Kids laughed somewhere down the hall, their voices echoing softly. They were led into a small office. Sister Evelyn closed the door, folded her hands on the desk. You said a girl? She asked. Chancellor opened the file and slid it toward her. I believe this child might be my daughter. She was presumed dead in a car accident 4 years ago. But there were inconsistencies, and someone saw a child here in Willow Creek who matches her description. The nun looked over the paper quietly. I'm sorry, Mr. Reed. I recognize the case, but I can't confirm or deny identities. Many of our children are placed through private agencies. We protect their privacy. This isn't about privacy, Chancellor said, his voice firm. This is about a little girl who might have been taken. I understand that, Sister Evelyn replied calmly. But I also have a duty to keep the children in my care safe from being hurt again. Amia leaned forward. Then let us see her. One look, that's all. The nun hesitated, then sighed. There is a child here. She's 9. Came to us with no records, no birth certificate. She was found abandoned near a rest stop by state police. She wouldn't speak for months, called herself Lissy. Chancellor's breath caught. That was my daughter's nickname. Sister Evelyn stood. Wait here. 10 minutes passed, like hours, and then the door opened. A girl stepped in. She was small, slender, cocoa-brown skin, her hair in uneven puffs, eyes wide but guarded. She wore a yellow sundress with cartoon strawberries and held a tattered bunny rabbit under one arm. When she looked up, Amia gasped because she had Chancellor's eyes, dark, almond-shaped, and framed with thick lashes. The room was still. Chancellor slowly crouched down. "Hi," he said gently. The girl said nothing. He didn't push. He just smiled. "My name's Chancellor. That's a big name, huh?" She stared at him. Amia knelt beside him, her heart pounding. "What's your name?" she asked softly. The girl whispered, "Lissy." Amia's eyes welled. Chancellor slowly reached for the bunny. "I had one like this when I was little," he said, but his ears weren't as floppy. Lissy watched him for a moment, then inched closer. Amia saw the glimmer in Chancellor's eyes, the desperate hope, the silent agony. But before he could ask more, Sister Evelyn returned, face pale. "You'll have to go." Chancellor blinked. "Why?" "I just received a call," she said. "From the state office. Someone knows you're here. They said if you don't leave, they'll involve legal action." Chancellor stood. "Who called?" "I wasn't told." "But how would anyone—" Amia stepped forward. "Someone's trying to stop him." Sister Evelyn hesitated, then spoke in a lowered tone. "There are things about this child's placement that never sat right with me. Private files, gaps in background, a rush to finalize an identity for her. When I asked questions, I was told to stop digging." Chancellor's jaw clenched. "Then someone's hiding the truth." "She's safe here, for now," the nun said. "But if you make noise, they'll move her, permanently." Chancellor looked at the girl again. Lissy clung to the bunny, eyes confused but calm. Amia stepped forward and crouched to Lissy's height. "You like music?" she asked gently. Lissy nodded. Amia hummed softly, the same lullaby she always hummed while dusting the mansion's nursery. Lissy tilted her head. "I know that song." Chancellor's eyes widened. "Where did you hear it?" he asked. The girl looked at him. "I used to have a box. It played the song. Mama gave it to me. But the lady took it." Amia's throat closed. "The lady?" "She wore red lips," Lissy said. "She made me go in the car." Chancellor's breath vanished. That wasn't a memory a foster child would invent. That was his daughter's past. Amia turned to Sister Evelyn. "She remembers. She's his." The nun looked conflicted, heartbroken. "I can't let you take her. Not yet." "I'm not here to take her," Chancellor said. "I'm here to protect her." That night, in a hotel 2 towns over, Chancellor sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. "She's mine," he whispered. "I felt it." Amia sat beside him. "I know she is. They stole her, lied to me. They made me bury an empty coffin while she was out there alone." Tears filled his eyes. "I let her down." Amia took his hand. "Number, you believed what you were told. They made you believe she was gone. I should have fought harder." "You're fighting now." He looked at her, lost and raw. "I need you." She held his face in her hands. "I'm not going anywhere." And in the darkness of that hotel room, as thunder rolled once again in the Tennessee sky, Chancellor finally let the tears fall. Not as a billionaire, not as a broken man, but as a father, finally finding his way back. When Chancellor and Amia returned to Atlanta, the air at the Reed estate had changed. It wasn't the silence they were used to. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Something about the gates, the way the security guards nodded too quickly, how Ms. Lorette didn't meet Amia's eyes. Everything whispered that someone had been here while they were gone, and that someone left a message. a message they hadn't seen yet. 2 hours later, Chancellor's phone buzzed during a call with his lawyer. He glanced down, then froze. Incoming text. No name, just a number. Unknown. You dig up ghosts, you get buried beside them. She's better off dead to you. Attached. A blurry photo of Amia leaving the children's home in Tennessee, her hand barely brushing Lissy's shoulder. He hung up without warning, his face gone pale. Amia looked up from across the room. What is it? He turned the screen toward her. She stared at the image, then read the message. Chancellor's voice was flat, controlled, but his knuckles turned white around the phone. Somebody is watching us. Someone doesn't want her found, Amia whispered. No, he said. Someone doesn't want you in this. She blinked. Me? He nodded. They've seen how close you are to me, how much I trust you. You're a threat. She shook her head, standing. But I haven't done anything. That's exactly why they'll come for you, because your presence changes me, and that makes you dangerous. The next day, Amia arrived at the estate like usual, except it wasn't usual anymore. She stepped through the grand doors and found the foyer filled with boxes, her supplies, her bag, and a sealed letter resting on top. Ms. Lorette stood nearby, hands folded tightly. I was told to give you this. Amia opened the letter. Inside was one sentence, typed. For your safety and mine, I'm ending your employment at the Reed estate effective immediately. Chancellor. The pen dropped from her fingers. What? She breathed. Lorette didn't look at her. I don't make the rules, I just follow them. But he said, I don't know what he said to you. Lorette interrupted. But this letter came down this morning. Official, signed. Amia's throat burned. Did he even talk to me first? No. Amia stood in stunned silence as her world shifted under her feet. He just cut me off? Lorette's voice dropped. It's not because he stopped caring. Then why? Lorette's eyes darted around the hallway. Because he's scared, and when Chancellor Reed is scared, he cuts things loose before someone else can break them. Amia grabbed her bag, walked to the door, paused, then turned back. Tell him something for me. Lorette tilted her head. Tell him I wasn't the one who made this house feel like home, she whispered. He was. I just reminded him how. She didn't cry until she got back to her apartment, and when she did, it wasn't gentle. It was a hurricane. She curled up on the couch and let the weight of it all crush her. The way he'd touched her face, the way he'd whispered, You make me feel safe, only nights before. And now? Nothing. No explanation. No goodbye. Just a cold letter. Amia didn't sleep that night. Across town, Chancellor stood at the window of his study, staring out into the darkness. Ms. Lorette entered behind him. She's gone, she said softly, just like you asked. He didn't turn around. Lorette stepped closer. You did what you thought was right. No, he said hoarsely. I did what they forced me to do. Do you really believe she was safe here? I believe I just made the safest place in her life feel like betrayal. Lorette watched him. She'll survive. Chancellor turned around. But what if I don't? The following week moved like molasses. Amia went back to cleaning small homes, cheap offices, taking whatever job she could. But none of it felt the same. Not after what she had touched. Not after him. People whispered in the break room at Premier Elite Cleaning. They'd seen photos online, a maid riding in the Billionaire'S car, another shot, her hand in his, stepping out of a black SUV. The story was out, and the rumors came fast. She must have seduced him. Probably blackmail. Sleeping her way into money. She stayed silent. She stayed low, but inside she was unraveling. On the 10th night, her doorbell rang. She opened it slowly. Lorette stood outside. Amia blinked. "What are you doing here?" "I came to give you this," Lorette said, handing her a small envelope. Inside was a photo, a little girl in a yellow sundress, standing in front of a school bus. Lissy. "She's been moved," Lorette said. "Private home, no record. Chancellor just found out today. He's losing it." "Why are you showing me this?" Amia whispered. "Because no one's listening to him anymore," Lorette said. "He tried to follow protocol. They shut the door, and he's cracking. I'm scared he'll do something reckless." Amia stared at the photo. "Then tell him to fight harder." Lorette shook her head. "He won't, not without you." Amia's breath hitched. "He thinks pushing you away is saving you." Amia folded the photo. "Then he's wrong." That night she didn't sleep. She packed a bag, called a car, and by sunrise she was standing at the gates of the Reed estate once again. Hair in a bun, no uniform, no badge. Just her. The guard blinked in confusion. "Miss Johnson?" "Let me in," she said. "I was told you were terminated." "Then call Chancellor and tell him the ghost he buried just came back through the door." The guard stared, then picked up the phone. Inside the house, Chancellor looked up from the study when the door opened. He hadn't shaved in days. His tie was hanging loose, his suit unbuttoned. And then he saw her, and everything stopped. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "And yet I am," Amia replied. He took a step forward. "I thought I was protecting you." "You were protecting yourself. I didn't want to lose you." "You already did," she whispered, "but I came back anyway." He reached for her, stopped, then she stepped into him. Their foreheads touched, and all the silence fell away. The mansion had never been louder in its silence. Amia stood in the center of Chancellor Reed's study again, but this time without a mop, without a name tag, and without fear. She was no longer the maid. She was the woman he let go, and the one who came back. Across from her, Chancellor sat at his desk, his face shadowed by exhaustion. The man who once controlled billion-dollar rooms with a single look now looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. But when she returned, something in him softened, slowly, like light crawling back under a locked door. He slid a drawer open and pulled out a small cream envelope. A letter. "I was going to send this," he said quietly, pushing it across the desk toward her. "But I knew I didn't deserve the right." Amia hesitated, then picked it up. Her name was written in his script, neat, precise, controlled, like everything he tried so hard to be. She opened it. "Amia, you deserve more than what I gave you. You brought life into a house I had buried. You hummed in hallways meant for ghosts. You held my grief in your bare hands and treated it like something holy, and I repaid you with silence. I let fear speak louder than love. But I loved you, still do. If you never come back, I'll understand. But I want you to know, before you walked into my life, I was a house with no windows. You gave me light. See." Her hands shook. "I didn't need a letter," she whispered. "I needed to say it," he replied, "even if it was too late." She looked up, her eyes burning. "Then say it to my face." Chancellor stood, walked to her, and without hesitation, placed his hands gently on her face. "I'm sorry," he said, "for trying to protect you by pushing you away. I've lived my life building walls, but I don't want to live behind them anymore. Not without you." She leaned into him. "Then don't." Their kiss this time was different. It wasn't desperate or uncertain. It was rooted, grounded, earned. Later that night, Amia sat cross-legged on the floor of the East Wing nursery. Toys surrounded her like a time capsule. Forgotten dolls, building blocks, faded coloring books. Chancellor sat beside her, his jacket folded over a chair, sleeves rolled to his elbows. "She remembered the lullaby," Amia whispered. "That means something." Chancellor nodded. The private investigator is already tracing every detail in Lissy's foster history, but someone's blocking access, threatening records, pressuring the agency to shut it down. Who? She asked. He sighed. I don't know yet, but they have money and reach. Amia's brow furrowed. Could it be someone from inside your own circle? He hesitated. There was a pause. Then, Bianca. Amia's stomach turned. You think she was involved? She disappeared the same month Lissy went missing. When she came back, she refused to speak about where she'd been, and she always said, I didn't need a child to carry on my legacy. You think she faked the crash? I don't know, he said, rubbing his forehead, but I know she's the only one who ever asked me to sign custody over to someone else, just for paperwork reasons. Amia swallowed. We need proof. I have a meeting tomorrow. Someone from inside the agency's old adoption division, an anonymous source. I'm going with you. Chancellor looked at her. You sure? I'm not leaving your side again. He reached for her hand and held it like it was the only truth he had left. The next day, Chancellor and Amia arrived at a quiet cafe tucked into the corner of Midtown, private, nondescript, the kind of place people used for deals that weren't meant to be overheard. A woman in her 50s sat at the far booth, tall, dark-skinned, with salt and pepper braids pulled into a low twist. Her name was Marcia Calloway, and she looked like a woman who had carried too many secrets. Chancellor introduced himself. She nodded once. I knew your daughter's file was wrong the minute I saw it, she said bluntly. It was red-flagged, rerouted, and locked under executive privilege. That never happens with regular foster cases. Who had access? He asked. Only 5 people. 2 were admin. 1 was the agency director. 1 was me. And the last? She leaned in. Was Bianca Gaines. Amia's chest clenched. She filed a request to expedite emergency placement under a fake identity, Marcia continued. Then a week later, a child matching Madeline's description was removed from the system completely. Gone. No photo. No trace. Chancellor's voice dropped. She knew. She made it happen, Marcia corrected. But why would she do this? Amia asked. Because she wanted him, Marcia said, gesturing to Chancellor. And in her eyes, a grieving man is easier to catch than a healing one. She gave him tragedy and made herself the cure. Chancellor sat back slowly, his hands trembling. She let me bury my child, he whispered, and I let her into my home. That night, Chancellor sat in the nursery again, this time alone. Amia stood in the hallway, watching through the cracked door. He held a stuffed giraffe in his hands, one Lissy had clutched in dozens of baby pictures. His fingers trembled as he turned it over, brushing dust from its button eyes. I'm coming for you, he whispered. I don't care what I have to lose. Amia stepped in. You're not going alone. He looked up. They'll come after you too. I'm not afraid of people like Bianca, she said. I've cleaned behind their curtains. I know the dirt they hide. He stared at her, overwhelmed. I love you, she said simply. And I love that little girl, even if I've only held her once. He walked to her slowly and placed the giraffe in her hands. Then we fight together. Meanwhile, across the city, Bianca stood in her penthouse, swirling wine in a glass and staring at a tablet screen. She watched the footage again. Chancellor kissing Amia in the garden, their hands laced, their heads bowed together like soulmates. A bitter smile curled on her lips. I warned you, she whispered. You don't know how to love and protect, so I'll remind you what happens when you try to have both. She opened a safe. Inside was a folder, labeled. I warned you, she whispered. You don't know how to love and protect. So I'll remind you what happens when you try to have both. She opened a safe. Inside was a folder, labeled Amia Johnson, Prior Records, Employment, Family, Weaknesses. She tapped a number on her phone. When I say release it, she said calmly, you release it. It started with a headline. Chancellor Reed was finishing a meeting with his legal team when his assistant barged into the conference room, tablet shaking in her hands. Sir, you need to see this. At first, he didn't flinch. Rumors came and went. Clickbait was currency for the bored elite. But the second he saw the image plastered across the screen, his heart stopped. Maid turned mistress. Who is Amia Johnson? Billionaire's housekeeper has darker ties than you think. Beneath it, a photo of Amia leaving the children's home in Tennessee. A blurry, cropped image of her hugging Chancellor outside his car. A side-by-side of her high school mugshot from a wrongful theft accusation, dismissed years ago but sensationalized now. The article painted a narrative she never wrote. From dusting floors to seducing CEOs, Amia Johnson's meteoric rise has many asking, what did she really come for? Love, or the child-shaped checkbook the Reed fortune can offer? Chancellor stood so fast his chair screeched. Shut it down, he barked. Issue a cease and desist now. We're trying, his legal advisor said, but the leak came from multiple outlets. Someone had this planted across 5 syndicates. It's not just gossip, it's a strategic hit. Bianca, he muttered. She hasn't been tied directly, the advisor added. But whoever's behind this, they've made Amia look like a con woman. Public support is turning fast. She's not a con, he snapped. She's the only reason I'm standing. His assistant cleared her throat. There's more. She handed him a printed letter, addressed to the State Child Welfare Board. It was a formal petition filed anonymously. It claimed that Chancellor Reed was mentally unstable, romantically entangled with a former criminal, and seeking to unethically reclaim custody of a non-biological child. His hands trembled. It was designed to do one thing, stop the adoption case before it could begin, and it was working. Amia was mopping the second-floor corridor when Ms. Lorette found her. You need to come with me, she said. I'm working, Amia replied. Not anymore, Lorette said gently. Chancellor wants you downstairs. Now. She found him in the sunroom, the one they'd sat in during the storm, the one where he kissed her hand like she was made of light. This time, the blinds were shut. Papers were scattered on the table. His phone buzzed with unanswered calls. He looked up at her, and her heart broke. He looked like a man drowning again. She stepped forward. What's wrong? He handed her the article, the photo, the letter. Her breath left her body. My mugshot, she whispered. How did they even… Doesn't matter, he said. It was dropped, but that's not what the world sees. They don't care about truth. She read the child welfare petition. They're trying to make you look unfit. They're trying to make you look dangerous, he said bitterly. Like you manipulated your way into my life, into my house. Her voice shook. What do we do? I need you to go, he said softly. She froze. What? Not forever. Just for now. If you stay here, if we're seen together, it's over. They'll shut the entire case down. We'll never get custody of Lissy. Tears welled in her eyes. You want me to hide? I want to protect you. I don't want to be protected, she cried. I want to be chosen. He stood, walked to her, held her face gently in his hands. You are my choice. But if I don't fix this, they'll take her. They'll erase her again, and I won't survive that a second time. She stared at him, her hands clenched. And what about me? He kissed her forehead. You saved me. Now let me save you both. That night, Amia returned to her apartment. Alone. She closed the door, sat on the edge of her couch, and sobbed. Not because he broke her heart, but because the world refused to believe she even had one to break. The following morning, Chancellor stood in front of a sea of reporters outside the Reed estate gates. His suit was sharp, his voice was clear, his soul was on fire. "I will not dignify slander," he began. "I will not allow strangers to rewrite my life." Flashbulbs popped. "I am a man who lost everything. I buried a child whose body I never saw. I spent 4 years convincing myself I didn't deserve to heal." A pause. "But I met someone, a woman who didn't want anything from me except honesty. She didn't ask for wealth or fame. She asked for truth." The crowd leaned in. "And because of her, I found mine." He held up a file, Lissy's. "I am petitioning for full paternal verification of the child known as Annalise Carter. I will prove she is my daughter, and when I do, I will fight to bring her home." He lowered the mic. "One more thing," he said, almost as an afterthought. "I love Amia Johnson." Gasps, murmurs. He smiled. "She didn't take anything from me. She gave me everything back." At home, Amia watched the press conference from her phone. Alone. When he said her name, she dropped the phone to her lap and covered her mouth. Tears rolled down her face. But this time, they weren't from grief. They were from belief. For the first time, someone had loved her loud. In public. In power. In front of the world that said she wasn't enough, and she hadn't even asked. That night, Chancellor stood alone in the nursery. The giraffe sat in the crib. Beside it, a baby photo of Lissy he hadn't looked at since the funeral. He heard the door open, turned, and there she was. Amia. No words. He opened his arms. She stepped into them. And just like that, the house began to feel like home again. It rained the morning of the hearing. Not the loud kind that hammered rooftops or sent lightning dancing across the sky, but the soft, persistent drizzle that blanketed the city in hush, as if the world itself knew something sacred was about to unfold. Chancellor stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie with slow, precise hands. Behind him, Amia appeared in the reflection, watching from the doorway. Her dress was navy blue, elegant, simple. Her curls framed her face, untouched, proud. "You ready?" she asked. He nodded, but said nothing. Truth was, he hadn't been ready for anything since the day Lissy disappeared. He hadn't been ready to fall in love with the maid. He hadn't been ready to believe in miracles again. But here he was, on the brink of getting both of them back, and for the first time, he didn't feel alone. The courthouse was packed, rows of wooden benches filled with reporters, legal aides, and curious onlookers who had followed the case since the scandal broke. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but that didn't stop the buzz from building in whispers along the halls. Chancellor Reed, the grieving billionaire, the obsessed father, the man who fell for the maid. At the front of the courtroom, Judge Delaney, a woman known for her steel-grey suits and zero tolerance for theatrics, reviewed the case file. To her left sat Marcia Calloway, the whistleblower from the adoption agency. Her presence alone had turned the case from speculation to sensation. To her right, Chancellor, silent, eyes forward, and behind him, always, Amia. The court officer called the room to order. Judge Delaney peered over her glasses. "Mr. Reed, you're seeking legal recognition of a minor child, currently under state protection, as your biological daughter?" "Yes, Your Honor," he said. She tapped the file. "You submitted DNA samples." "We did. The results are here." "And what do they show?" Chancellor swallowed. His hand tightened around Amia's for strength. "That the child known as Annalise Carter is, in fact, Madeline Grace Reed, my daughter." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Judge Delaney raised her hand. We will not have disruptions. She flipped through the pages. Confirmation is 99.96%. Yes. And do you believe the adoption was fraudulent? Yes. Bianca Gaines submitted false documentation and deliberately removed Madeline from state custody under a fabricated identity. Do you have evidence of this? He motioned to Marcia. She stood. I do. I provided copies of all the forged files, emails, and dates that proved Miss Gaines manipulated the adoption database to cover up the child's identity. Delaney looked unimpressed, not by the evidence, but by the damage. And where is Miss Gaines now? Chancellor answered. She fled the country last night. The judge stared at him. Of course she did. It took 6 hours to go through every piece of evidence, custody challenges, psych evaluations, school reports, state objections. Then finally, Judge Delaney looked up from the bench. In the eyes of the court, Chancellor Reed has provided sufficient evidence to prove that Annalise Carter is his daughter, Madeline Grace Reed. Custody is hereby transferred permanently to Mr. Reed, effective immediately. There was no cheering, no dramatic music, just relief, and Amia crying in silence behind him. They didn't go straight home. First, they stopped at St. Maribel's. Lissy was waiting in a navy coat, bunny in hand, hair freshly washed and tied with white ribbons. She looked up at him, blinking. You came back, she said. Chancellor knelt. I promised I would. She stepped forward, looked at Amia, then at him. Do I have a home now? He smiled through tears. You have a home, he whispered, and a heart, and a future. You have everything. The drive back to the mansion was silent. Lissy fell asleep in the back seat. Bunny clutched to her chest. Amia looked at her through the mirror. She's beautiful. She's perfect, Chancellor whispered. Back at the estate, Lissy explored slowly. She ran her fingers along polished banisters, peeked behind grand curtains, tiptoed through silent rooms. Then she stopped in the nursery. She stepped in, paused, then walked to the giraffe in the crib. I remember this, she said. Chancellor stood in the doorway. It used to be yours. She picked it up, held it close. Did Mama leave it for me? His throat tightened. She did. He didn't know if it was true, but it felt true. Amia knelt beside her. Would you like us to tuck you in tonight? Lissy nodded, so that night they did. Later, after the girl had fallen asleep and the house was once again quiet, Chancellor and Amia stood in the garden under the moonlight, the same spot where they had once kissed in the rain, long before anything made sense. I don't know how to say thank you, he whispered. You don't need to. You gave me everything back. She shook her head. I didn't give it. You were just brave enough to reach for it. He smiled. Do you know what I see when I look at you now? She looked up. I don't see the maid, he said. I see the miracle. A few weeks later, the press tried to keep the story going, but the headlines didn't last. People moved on, except one magazine got it right. A quiet article in a family-focused publication with a simple headline. She was never just the maid, she was the mother who chose them both. And beneath it, a photo, a soft one, of Amia in the garden, smiling, holding Lissy's hand, while Chancellor watched them both like the sun had come home. The Reed estate was different now. Laughter filled the halls. Lissy ran through the living room with 2 puffs in her hair and jelly on her fingers. Amia chased her, apron stained, eyes bright. And Chancellor. He sat with coffee on the balcony, not because he was hiding, but because he finally had something worth watching. A family, a home, a love that no one could take away. Not wealth, not scandal, not power, because once upon a time he hired a maid to clean his house, and instead she healed it. Here comes the end of the Season 1. If you're interested in Season 2, comment Mr. Hope, Season 2.